Rebecca or Jesse, if you're able to put the PowerPoint up on the screen, we're going to go through a presentation that we referenced last meeting in regards to...
Just for a quick introduction, we're going to be recording this and sharing it with the Board of Commissioners. Hopefully that'll be an opportunity for Jack to, kill two birds with one stone, not that anyone on either board is a bird. Thank you.
So the presentation is in regards to Camp Hill Road and Virginia Drive and following up on the signalization of that, and specifically what we talked about last month was what's the geometry of the intersection going to look like, and what are recommendations for turning movements at the intersection. So if we go to the next slide, there's a quick agenda for this, and just to give you an understanding, presentation is set for about 12 to 15 minutes. There's 15 slides. For the agenda, the first step is overview of the signalization process to date. Then we'll look at the intersection geometry recommendations, going into review of truck turning analyses for the recommended intersection geometry. Then evaluation of turn restriction and pedestrian crossing concepts. Lastly, we did want to look at especially the Applewood Heller Way area, and so there is a slide about cut-through mitigation concepts. If we go to the next slide, this is basically the overview, which shows traffic in and around the area of the intersection of Virginia Drive and Camp Hill Road. As you can see on Virginia Drive, there are about 8,500 to about 9,000 vehicles per day during an average weekday. These numbers were taken in 2015, but they stayed relatively consistent, went a little bit up with some of the things happening down at 1100 Virginia Drive with Toll Brothers. But then obviously COVID has played a role. It is expected that things will go back to a pre-COVID condition. The question is, when does that happen? Camp Hill Road has a volume that varies from about 2,500 on the north side of Virginia Drive to 3,500 vehicles per day on the south side of Camp Hill Road in the area over the turnpike. A couple of other background notes that aren't on this slide. From the standpoint of crashes, when we sent in the warrant analysis, which was sent in October, there were 8 crashes between June of 2018 and May of 2019. That was one of the warrant analyses, the crash experience. The signal met the warrant for the number of crashes. There are 5 crashes needed that would have been correctable if a traffic signal was in place. So it did meet that warrant, but the overall volume of the intersection did not meet the warrant. So although the crashes were high, it didn't formally meet the warrant for crash experience. But it did meet the warrant for the peak hour, and that would be specific to the morning peak hour. It also was very close to meeting the warrant for the 4-hour volume. The second thing is the illegal turns that we've talked about before. When we did our 14-hour count, there were about 155 illegal turns. 2/3 of them were from Camp Hill Road to Virginia Drive in any of the directions. So 2/3, 1/3. Of the 2/3 that were from Camp Hill to Virginia Drive, 50 of them were the right turn from Camp Hill Road to Virginia Drive heading east towards the slip ramp or the Wawa area. So
Could I ask everybody to mute their mic, please? We're getting some background noise.
That might be the trash guys out back here, so I apologize. But a full 33% are the people that are making a right from Camp Hill to Virginia. The remaining 33% are the different moves from Virginia Drive to Camp Hill Road, and of them, it's pretty evenly distributed between left and right turns of people that are making the illegal moves. The last step in the overview was speed. pre-road diet, the 85th percentile speed was 39 miles per hour. That means up to 85% of the vehicles were traveling up to 39 miles per hour. When the road diet got implemented, that number went to 35 miles per hour. So that's a significant 10% drop in speed as a result of the road diet. One other thing that's very telling, before the road diet, over 50% of the vehicles were traveling between 36 and 45 miles per hour along that stretch of Virginia Drive. That number dropped to 22% of the people traveling from 36 to 45 miles per hour. So the road diet has slowed traffic down, but you still have crashes out there and you still meet the warrants for a traffic signal. If we go to the next slide, this slide will just show levels of service. So this was from the previous presentation. It talks about all the intersections in the area and the levels of service that are out there today. Virginia Drive, because it's a stop sign condition, has a level of service F in the morning peak with an average delay over 1 minute. And as you stick with the stop sign condition, but increase traffic associated with the projected growth, and that projected growth would have been the 900 residential units that we looked at, the library being fully open, and the new employees coming into the toll headquarters at 1100 Virginia. When that happens, the level of service in the morning gets worse, obviously, to the tune of about a 95-second average delay in the third column out of 4. And the afternoon actually gets bad, whereas the afternoon wasn't bad before at the intersection. Now you're getting upwards of 45 seconds of delay and a level of service E. When implementing the traffic signal, that level of service goes down to a level of service C and a level of service B. So you basically have good delay at the intersection with your levels of service. So that's the background. Let's get into the geometry of the intersection with the next slide. So this first slide is shown better on the next one, but this is the narrative to the next slide. Basically, in looking at this intersection, and to orient, north side would be the Camp Hill Road side on Highland, south side would be Camp Hill Road on the Turnpike side, east would be Virginia Drive on the slip ramp and Wawa side, west would be Virginia Drive on the Commerce Drive side. The biggest area to stay away from with this intersection is the northwest corner where the Founders Building is. The driveway for the Founders Building is very close to the intersection, and there are a lot of utilities that are going on within that corner, both overhead and underground, including Williams Gas, Verizon, Comcast, and very heavy overhead poles with a lot on it. We wanted to really stay away from that corner because of safety issues, operation issues, and cost issues. One of the other areas that we stayed away from is the southwest corner on the other side. For the same reasons related to utilities, there's also a lot of drainage issues going on in there, a lot of drainage inlets and pipes in that area. But we do need to widen Camp Hill Road, and so we're looking to widen Camp Hill Road on the other side, and that is to accommodate turns. And I'll get into that a little later. We also need to reconstruct both the northeast and southeast corners to increase the turn radii for turns. And we also need to introduce a crosswalk. Now we can introduce 2 crosswalks across Virginia Drive. We're recommending 1, and I can get into that. The next slide will show a little better what this narrative discussed. So upper left is pointing no widening is proposed to accommodate turning vehicles for both the northwest and southwest corners. You can see how close that driveway is for the Founders Building to the intersection. The concern there is that if a left turn lane is in that center turn lane where we currently have the diagonal striping, which is gore markings, the vehicles coming out of that driveway, taking a left and then taking another left onto Camp Hill Road, it's too close. So we really want to stay away from that northwest corner, because if we need to increase that turn radii, then we're getting even closer to that driveway with everything that we do. Plus, I mentioned all the utility issues in that corner. On the southwest corner, it's not to the same level of concern as the northwest corner, but that southwest corner also has a lot of utility stuff going on into it. So if you substantially need to touch it, then the cost is really going to start going up. Now, there is at the bottom left a minor widening of Camp Hill that's proposed. That's only because right now the curb doesn't go up to the bridge and there's a bit of a drop off right there. So that is a safety issue. On the other side, we have minor widening proposed on both sides of Camp Hill Road along the right side headed northbound. That is to allow for the right turn from Camp Hill Road northbound to Virginia Drive to head towards the slip ramp. And then we also need it to make right turns from Virginia Drive headed westbound onto Camp Hill Road to head northbound towards Highland. That doesn't mean you have to do the turn, but you do need to accommodate for the turn specifically with fire trucks. And so you need this widening in order to do that. Lastly, crosswalks. We are showing one crosswalk along the east side of Virginia Drive to cross Virginia Drive. We're not showing it on the west side, again, because of everything going on in that area with the driveway, with the utilities. We would have to put in new ADA ramps on that side if we introduced a crosswalk. So introducing ADA ramps in that section where the trail was located and on the other side of the street is difficult. It can be done, but I don't see the benefit of a crosswalk on this side, because in the future, if Camp Hill Road gets a local trail connection coming from the Heller Way area over the turnpike, the connection with a sidewalk will be on the right side of Camp Hill Road. So it'll line up with the crosswalk very well. Also, people that would be coming from like where Asplund is on that lower left building, they can easily go to the other crosswalk, and there really isn't any other need besides that office building there for people that would want to cross the street on the west side of the road. Most of the people would naturally be coming from the 1015, 1035, 1055 Virginia Drive area down, and then they could cross on the east side. So we'll need to justify that to PennDOT, but I believe it's a solid recommendation. Lastly, bottom right, there's a note. We've gone under the assumption that no right-of-way is anticipated to be required. Through the review with PennDOT, we'll determine where signal easements will be needed. I do believe we will need at least one, which will be on the lower right corner, that's where we would put the controller cabinet. Right now, it's a pretty open little area, which is nice for accessibility. And the other part of this is that we're going under the assumption that no revision to the Camp Hill Road truck weight restrictions would be needed. And we'll get into that. Next slide is in regards to the next piece of the puzzle for this presentation. We talked about geometry, so what about the turns? Per the ordinance in place, the maximum gross weight for vehicles on Camp Hill Road is 10,000 pounds from Dreshertown Road to Susquehanna. So due to the above weight restrictions, that's going to dictate what your design vehicle is. And the design vehicle is what's going to dictate the radii of your turns. Because a vehicle needs to start from its lane and get into the lane where it wants to go without encroaching into other travel lanes and or going across stop bars such that it's impacting vehicles waiting at a signal in another direction. So with the above weight restrictions, that's basically a single unit truck. And even those single unit trucks reach over 10,000 pounds. But we do need to account for fire trucks. So fire trucks became our design vehicle for this effort. And fire trucks should be able to make all the turns, like I said, without requiring a stopped vehicle to move out of their lane. The last assumption that was made going into this presentation, that was from the February 2020 presentation, what was on the table at that time was all turns from Camp Hill Road to Virginia Drive are recommended, except the left turn from Camp Hill Road north onto Virginia Drive west between the morning hours of 7 to 9. That was the left turn as you come over the turnpike to make the left turn to head towards the library in the morning. That approach is heaviest in the morning, volume-wise, and the recommendation for this is because left turns would really impact the operations of the intersection and pose a backup situation for the people that are waiting behind them to get around left turning vehicles. There's no ability to put in a left turn lane on that approach because of the bridge that is very close to the intersection. So that's one of the reasons why the recommendation is still to not allow lefts to turn left between 7 and 9 for Camp Hill Road northbound. The next slide is a series of 3 slides that go into what are called the truck turning templates. This shows how a fire truck would be making the turn. In the upper left, that would be the trucks that are turning left from Camp Hill onto Virginia in both directions. The outline of the green is the outside of the tires, and it basically shows you that the trucks can make that turn. Upper right shows the left-hand turns from Virginia Drive onto Camp Hill Road. Again, they can make the turn. The fire truck can make the turn. I want to note something in regards to the pavement markings that are shown. So on the left side of Virginia Drive, which would be the west approach, the center turn lane shows the gore markings to restrict any left turns being made. On the opposite side, I show a left-only lane that would be allowing left turns. That being said, I am not recommending left turns from this approach, and I'll get into why in a few minutes. But we want to do our truck turning as if it can be done to be conservative. So even though the recommendation is to restrict this left turn move, we do want to do our geometry with our curbs to allow for it and not preclude it. So I did want to make a special note of that. The bottom left shows the right turns of the fire truck from Camp Hill onto Virginia. One of the benefits that you can see for the right turns to head west onto Virginia is that the fire trucks can use that center turn lane as part of their turn. If they weren't able to, if lefts were allowed, then in order to make that turn and not go into the center, you would really have to blow out the corner on that side. And the right turn in the opposite direction is able to make it because of the widening that is proposed. Lastly, the bottom right, you can see the right turns from Virginia Drive onto Camp Hill Road. Again, because it's a fire truck, they can use that center lane where there's nobody waiting to make a left turn from Virginia Drive onto northbound Camp Hill Road. And they can make the right turn to get onto Camp Hill Road to head over the turnpike. And again, the widening on the other side allows for the right turn to head northbound on Camp Hill Road. The next slide are for school buses. We did look at that as well. And basically, from a quick summary perspective, if we go to the next slide, we can see the school bus turns all make the turn very well. We do not show in the upper right school buses making the left turn from Virginia Drive onto northbound Camp Hill Road, because school buses would not be allowed to make that turn, whereas fire trucks, emergency situation, they can make any turn they want. All the other moves are accommodated by the geometry for a school bus. The final truck turning slide, the next one, is for single unit trucks. And again, here we post the sign that's out there today. We would also be posting these signs down at the intersection for the approaches of Camp Hill Road, showing the weight restriction of 10,000 gross vehicle pounds for the approaches of Camp Hill Road. For this, all of the approaches are able to make it. The bottom right does show the single unit clipping into the corner, but I do believe that if the single unit were to ease into the center lane a little bit, they can make that turn, and we can play around with some other things to make that happen. So we should be fine on that front. So we've talked about what the trucks are able to do based off the truck turning. So the next step is to talk about what turns are recommended and which turns are not. So the next slide is in regards to Virginia Drive headed westbound. And specifically for the Virginia Drive people that would want to take a right turn to head north onto Camp Hill Road. I do recommend this turn be allowed. The green shows the diversion route. The orange shows what they do today, or the blue shows what they do today, depending upon where the vehicle is headed. The yellow shows the ultimate destination of where a right turning vehicle would end up going, either by the orange or green or blue route. So today, the orange route goes, keeps staying on Virginia Drive, goes to Delaware, and makes a right turn onto Commerce Drive, which turns into Pinetown Road. They then get to Highland Avenue and make a left-hand turn. So one of the reasons for the recommendation is that specifically in the afternoons, the intersection of Pinetown and Highland has a steady flow of people coming up Commerce Drive, Pinetown Road. And what we've heard from residents is that there are people that actually make a right turn onto Highland Avenue, go into driveways and turn around so that they can go straight through and up Highland. They don't want to wait in the queue of the traffic heading up to the stop sign. This would redistribute that traffic and some of those people that are headed to the left off of Commerce Drive. So if you follow the notes in the middle bottom, it says 230 vehicles in the morning peak head straight along Virginia Drive headed westbound. The next note to the bottom left says that in the morning, 40 of those vehicles make a right onto Commerce Drive and Pinetown Road, and 90 do it in the afternoon peak. When they get up to Highland and Pinetown, 30 of those vehicles make a left and 160 of those vehicles make a left. So that's tracking how many may want to divert. And basically in the morning, it's not that bad. It's only 30 vehicles. And the morning is never a problem. It's normally the afternoon peak that is the problem. So in the afternoon, that's why I've highlighted the 90 vehicles in the PM peak. They would be the ones that would be potentially diverting to the green route along that section of Highland Avenue. Some of those people may head straight up Camp Hill Road, but I don't think a large majority of those people would do that. The reason I showed the green for the continuation up Camp Hill Road is more due to the blue. So for people that are going out of 1100 Virginia and headed up to the intersection of Susquehanna and making a left, those might be people that would come down instead and make a right onto Camp Hill Road and head up to Susquehanna that way. I don't think anybody from Office Center Drive would do that because all of those buildings have that rear access onto Camp Hill Road off the back of Office Center Drive. So there really is no reason for anybody headed up Susquehanna Road to come down to the intersection of Virginia and Camp Hill to make a right. They have another outlet to do so. So I don't think that's going to be a heavy move coming out of 1100 Virginia, but there is the potential for it, and I wanted to point that out. So I do think that this move is justifiable, but I think it really helps the township residents, and that's what I was looking at this from, not just from the greater Fort Washington district perspective, but I believe there's a lot of people in the upper left neighborhoods of the Highland, Fort Washington, Summit, that area, the neighborhood residents there, that are going to come down Highland to Camp Hill, come down to Virginia and make a left to either head to the Wawa, to go to the slip ramps, to go to the Drescher Triangle, and this would be the return move. So I do think that a lot of residents in that section of the township would be served by the right turn move, and you can do it from an operations and safety perspective. So I do recommend that turn as part of this presentation. The next slide is looking at Virginia Drive turns to Camp Hill Road in the southbound direction. So this is taking a look at cars coming from the library, say, to make a right on the Camp Hill Road, or vehicles coming from the Wawa Office Center Drive area to make a left onto Camp Hill Road to then proceed over the turnpike and down. So I am recommending the right turn from Virginia Drive onto Camp Hill Road. I don't see this as a traffic diverting move. I see this as being someone who is coming from the southern part of the township, taking a left from Camp Hill Road onto Virginia Drive, going to the library, going to a Lifetime Fitness, and then returning. I see most of these as being off-peak type of uses that are not diverting, but are serving the township residents. And again, right turns are not problematic to an intersection. So from an operational perspective, I don't see it hurting the signal operations. So again, I think one of the major values to this are the people that are in the, for instance, the library, and coming back home. If that right turn was not available, they have to loop around and use that section of Highland Avenue that we just talked about. So this is a way to take traffic away from Highland Avenue as opposed to introduce it. So it's kind of a trade-off between the two. In regards to left turns from Virginia Drive, and specifically the left turn from the Wawa area down to Camp Hill Road over the turnpike, I would recommend that it be restricted. I would recommend both left turns be restricted, but we'll concentrate on this one first. I do think that a left turn allowance here will divert traffic in the morning and afternoon peak. to get around the congestion areas. The reason for the restriction recommendation is associated with the one-lane railroad overpass that is located just below Heller Way. That overpass is a one-lane bridge, and there's sight distance issues as you are coming into it, specifically as you're coming down Camp Hill Road from Dreshertown and trying to look under the bridge to the other side to see if a car is coming in the other direction. There's a yield condition for that move. Now, right turns are already going to be allowed from Camp Hill Road onto Virginia Drive, which is going to increase traffic coming in that other direction. That being said, we don't want to put too much more volume out there, and therefore restricting the left turns is a way to keep the volumes down going under that bridge, specifically in the morning and peak periods. PennDOT may say that, well, okay, you're trying to not do it in the morning and the afternoon peak. What about off-peak? And that's a discussion that, will be played out with PennDOT. And that's why, again, I was showing that left turn lane to make sure that the turns work with or without a left turn lane at that intersection. But the reason for the turn lane restriction at that area is because of the one-lane railroad overpass. The next slide is for the last turn move, and that would be the left turn from Virginia Drive onto Camp Hill Road northbound. And again, the recommendation is to restrict left turns due to safety concerns, the proximity of the driveway, the impacts on that northwest corner. And what we did in the upper right of this slide is we put the truck turning template in for what would happen if you needed to turn right from Camp Hill Road to Virginia Drive with a fire truck and the extent of the widening that would be required. So we are recommending that that not be done. The last slide, or second to last slide, is in regards to potential cut through. So before COVID, we did go out and take a look at Applewood and the turns from Dreshertown onto Applewood and then down at Heller Way and Camp Hill Road. And it looked like about 100 vehicles were diverting and using this as a cut through to get around congestion such as the Drescher Triangle. So to counter that, one recommendation would be to restrict right turns from Heller Way onto Camp Hill Road between the hours of 7 and 9 in the morning. That kind of goes hand in hand with the restriction of left turns from Camp Hill onto Virginia from 7 to 9 in the morning. It may not be extremely popular with the people in the neighborhood, from 7 to 9, not being able to make a right turn. But that being said, it does restrict the cut through capability when there's enforcement out there. And I do believe that if you had targeted enforcement and a commuter is coming through and wants to use Applewood and Leah and Heller Way and sees a police officer sitting there, they're not going to make a right, they're going to make a left, even though they want to make a right. And they're going to have to go all the way around. And they're going to say, well, I don't want to do that all the time. And then the next time they go out there, maybe the police officer isn't there, but the next time maybe they is. So I think it's a deterrent, and with targeted enforcement, it could be effective. So that is a recommendation on how to counter cut-through traffic. And the last slide is just thank you, and I know there's bound to be questions. So if there's any questions, please
Okay.
feel free.
Who has questions for Jack? Anybody?
I've got one. That restricting the residents coming down Heller Way to make the right turn on Camp Hill. Instead of restricting the residents and prohibiting cut-throughs at the end point, what about preventing the cut-throughs from the entry point up on, what is it, Applewood at Dressertown? And have a do not enter between 7 to 9 a.m.
You
I guess
could-
that restricts residents at that point too.
That would also, as you say, it would affect residents. There's also other ways into the area like Crestview Drive.
Right.
So you would have to do it at both locations. And I think it would be a trade-off at that point.
Right.
And from a targeted enforcement perspective, it's harder to follow two entrances than it is to target one exit. So from a resources perspective, I think it would be better served at the Heller Way and Camp Hill Road intersection.
Good.
Jack, do you have a slide that shows red and green and what turn movements for all of them? What turn movements you're permitting and not permitting under your recommendation?
I can insert that. The simple answer is all turns from Camp Hill to Virginia, and then right turns from Virginia to Camp Hill, no left turns from Virginia to Camp Hill.
So there's no left turns whatsoever from Virginia to Camp Hill.
That's the recommendation at this time.
I mean, aren't people right now, some people taking, what's this street, Lime Kiln to kind of get around everything? Don't we have, and isn't that kind of people speed down Lime Kiln? I mean, to some extent, if you allow people to kind of, I guess Lime Kiln to, that's Dressertown there, right? That goes by our property, by the, yeah. I mean, people are speeding by to kind of get around the park. I mean, it seems like some people, you might take some of the traffic off of Dressertown if you allow a left onto Camp Hill.
And off-peak, that may be something that PennDOT wants to see. My concern is that one-lane overpass and that condition right there. The more vehicles that get introduced into that one-lane underpass, the higher potential for a safety concern. And we know that in the morning particularly, that's going to be really the toughest time frame, so to speak. That's when everyone is already coming down Camp Hill Road and going over the turnpike to come into Virginia Drive. And right now, they're all supposed to go straight, but that's the heavy move in the morning. When the right turn is allowed from Camp Hill Road to go towards the Wawa or the slip ramp or Dresser Triangle, that is going to increase. Some people are going to, instead of going straight across, they're now going to take a right. So I think, for instance, the residential section of Camp Hill Road above Highland will have traffic taken away from it by allowing that right turn. But some of that may be new traffic. And so that traffic is going to go under that bridge. And if you allow the left turn to come in the opposite direction, then there's just going to be more vehicles that are going to need to interact in that very sensitive one-lane area. And it should be noted that there is the plan to try and get bikes and pedestrians from the Heller Way area down to Virginia Drive. And so
we actually have a grant application in for that. That has every likelihood of happening. We want to tie those neighborhoods into the cross-county trail.
Yeah, it would be a huge benefit. And so that's going to take away some of the available roadway space that will then be needed to convert to the pedestrians and bicyclists. So it's a very sensitive area. And without going down the path of introducing, for instance, and this is just an example, but a traffic signal on either side of the bridge to meter the traffic, one and then the other. I wouldn't want to recommend the left turns without something of that nature happening to that sensitive safety area.
This is running a little bit long, but I do want to just take a minute of the authority's time to explain where I see this going. First of all, thank you, Jack, for the presentation and the detail. That extra exhibit that one of the authority members asked for is going to make sense. What is your ultimate recommendation for this? Mm-hmm. To put that in context, one of the concerns I have is about the physical structures you propose that might not allow for flexibility. You know, one of the things that we constantly hear from residents are, you know, what happens after the pandemic? What happens after certain developments go in or don't go in? You know, how flexible would the township be in the future? And I like the idea that you designed for left turn lanes but didn't put them in, and they're in with paint, not concrete. Is that right?
Correct.
And just to remind the authority of the basics, paint and signs are cheaper to change than concrete and radiuses. So I appreciate that. The Board of Commissioners would have flexibility to redo the counts, go back to PennDOT for the permit. The next point is, and this is kind of a question to Jack as well, what I'd like to do is take this recommendation, your data, that sort of stuff, share it with the commissioners, but importantly, do a preliminary meeting with PennDOT. Because as both the commissioners and the authority need to know, PennDOT does control the design and operation of this traffic signal by permit. Every traffic signal in the state is operated under a very strict and detailed permit from PennDOT. They, in this case, they're not dictating every part of it, but they definitely, it only can be designed and operated based upon their permit. I do want to see what they have to say and incorporate that into any final recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, which in my opinion, and it's not a legal one, do have the ultimate authority under regulation on the actual ordinances or restrictions that apply to this. So that's where we're at. There's not a hard and fast decision on this yet, but we would be sharing this information with the commissioners, doing a preliminary meeting with PennDOT regarding the design, and importantly, I think reevaluating this after the pandemic, maybe after operations for 15, 18 months, and seeing what the impacts are in the neighborhoods or on these various streets. Jack, residents are very skeptical when a traffic engineer says this is going to reduce traffic. They always presume it's going against them. And I did hear you loud and clear is that actually you believe that this is going to reduce traffic, in at least best I can tell, both the Leah Drive neighborhood and to some extent on Camp Hill Road, past Highland. Is that right?
For certain moves, it will reduce traffic.
Yeah. Just be prepared for skepticism.
Understood.
That's all I had, Bob.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything before we move on?
I have one last thing on this issue. I just want to inform the municipal authority that Montgomery County put out their guidelines for the County Transportation Fund program, which is a grant program that will open from June 1st to July 30th. This project is very much eligible for that. You can apply for up to $500,000. Anything up to $200,000 is a 20% match. Everything beyond $200,000 to $500,000 then becomes a 50-50 match. But a very good resource. I have talked to the county about this project, so it's on their radar screen. And I wanted to raise that issue because it is something that I would recommend going after.
Is this $1 million project, Jack?
I have a cost estimate for this that includes a 10% contingency and 10% construction inspection that totals approximately $450,000.
Much less, that's good.
So how much would you recommend we go for the county to be successful?
There's a conditional use for the ADP site that includes a $125,000 contribution that could be used towards the local match. I would recommend going for somewhere in the order of between $250,000 to $275,000 for this grant.
Only 125,000? Somebody went easy on them.
That's the best we could do. But the nice thing about this is the county looks favorably on this because of that trail we mentioned coming down from the bridge, from coming down
Yeah.
Camp Hill from Leah. I would definitely recommend we go for the grant, and we could end up with this signal being relatively small cost to the township or authority if it goes well.
Liz, you have something to add?
I had a question. What is the purpose of the county fund? What's the mission of it, or
It's strictly for transportation projects.
improvements, or?
Yes, and it's different from the Montco 2040
Yeah, that's what I was
grants.
trying.
Because the Montco 2040 is a much bigger umbrella of projects that are a different type of project, streetscapes and things of that nature. This is more oriented towards transportation projects. They specifically talk about new traffic signals. They want connection points specifically to the trails. So the fact that the traffic signal would allow for a connection across the intersection through a crosswalk to the Cross County Trail is very strong. And so it's looking at different projects that basically don't have funding through the TIP for one reason or the other, because just the money's not there. But it's still an important project and they want to move it.
Jack, I would hate to not look at the Dresser Triangle for that as well, because obviously that's our biggest pinch point in the whole township.
Well, the Dresser Triangle is funded. So that's already on the TIP. It
Oh, it is
has,
on- okay.
yes, it has CMAQ funding and multimodal funding through
Jack,
construction.
is it any recommendation on who would be best to apply for it, the township or the authority for the county money?
The traffic signal will need to be applied for through the township, so it may be best that the township be the applicant for this project, but you could also do a partnership, so.
Thank you.
Jack, for this grant, including the 125, we're looking at putting in our ballpark $60,000 to get 275.
About that.
I'm-
Well,
Yeah.
a little more, up to 200,000. It's a 20% match, and then beyond
Right.
that, it's about 50%.
Right.
Okay. Let's move on. Jack?